This Guy's Garage. Like and subscribe.
We are resuming meeting number 57 of the Standing Committee on Procedure and House Affairs, and we are picking up where we left off on Tuesday. The committee will continue debating the amendment of MP Ryan Turnbull. As always, comments should go through the chair, and the clerk and I will maintain consolidated speaking list of members wishing to speak. When we left off on Tuesday, Mr. Turnbull, you had the floor. I had received the floor back, allowing us to continue with the day. And so I will provide you the floor back briefly, and then we'll continue with my speaking list that we did have already. The speaking list I had following Mr. Turnbull was Monsieur Fergus, suivi par Madame Romanado. Mr. Turnbull. You did.
I wasn't paying attention. You were.
A little bit of friendly competition here. It's always good. Really glad to be back and discussing this important motion and the amendment that I proposed. I think where I left off was, I had spent considerable time going through the many different mechanisms, independent mechanisms that and nonpartisan mechanisms that have been set up by our government to combat foreign election interference. And I spent considerable time on that, mainly because I was debunking the thing that the Conservatives keep saying over and over again, which is the claim, that false claim, that our government hasn't done anything on foreign election interference. And so I feel, just as a person who's doing the work and reading all the material and reading Rosenberg's report and others, it's just, a claim that keeps being made, but it's not factual. It's not based in the evidence that I see. So, and where I left off was just sort of getting into, in addition to all of the things that our government has done since 2017, it's really since 2015, but obviously some of that work took a while to implement. So all of the things that have been done since 2017, and then the new commitments within Budget 2022 have now also been added to with the Prime Minister's recent announcement. And I think that there's some significant steps forward that we should all be taking note of. So I know most of us probably were there or listening or have reviewed his remarks, but I have them here, and there's a few things that I'm sure we're all in need of reminders about. So one is that the Prime Minister obviously announced that there would be an appointment of an independent special rapporteur, and although the Conservatives struggle with the word, it certainly is, a mechanism that should be able to determine how to move forward. And I think it's, to me, it's a smart step. It's a smart move.
What is unacceptable, I repeat, is to forsake our wonderful traditions and conventions and invite political aides to testify. And it's disappointing, I'll repeat this, to see that leader of the official opposition, and in English we say, the image that comes to mind is the following.
Pour se contredire.
In a sense, he's contorting himself, twisting himself, getting himself into a bind. When he was minister, when he had the privilege of being a minister in the Harper administration, he made the very same arguments that I'm making today. i.e., political aides should not be called or summoned to appear. And I'll quote my colleague
on my private member's bill, I know has incredible integrity and takes this to heart. And Mr. Alex Ruff, who is a retired colonel with the Canadian Armed Forces with 25 years of service, sits on NSICOP. If we don't trust someone with 25 years of service in the Canadian Armed Forces that has a very clear understanding of national security and the importance of that, I'm not quite sure why members here or members in the House would doubt the integrity of their colleagues that sit on this really important committee that is going to look at the issue of foreign interference and have access to those top secret clearance documents.
So I am not very content, Mr. Turnbull, with through the chair, of course, with the amendment that you brought forward. It doesn't meet the criteria that I have. I understand that a special rapporteur is going to be appointed. We're still waiting to see who that is. But I want to be very clear with everything that the Prime Minister has proposed. It is all secretive. It doesn't allow for what we are calling for, which is a transparent, public, and independent process.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess I'll start by addressing the point of order that Mr. Berthold referenced a little while ago. He was very quick to defend the words of the Leader of the Opposition. What I'm more interested in, quite frankly, is listening to the Conservatives defend the words of one of their own members who sits on this committee, who surprisingly hasn't been here since we brought up his words a couple weeks ago, and that's Mr. Calkins. Now, it's interesting, Madam Speaker, I know that he's on the Hill because he's you saw him this morning? Well, I saw him in the House yesterday sitting there, so I know that he's here. I know he's a member of this committee. I also know that when I raised in a meeting where I was participating by Zoom a week or so ago, I raised some comments that he made. In particular, he referred to a Liberal MP as being an agent of Beijing.
We also will be hearing about a special rapporteur that will be decided upon and announced in the coming days as well. And he or she will have free rein to decide whether a public inquiry is the right route to go or not. So I'm not fully convinced.
Mr. Cooper.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I will be very brief. First of all, I do want to correct the record about what you said, respectfully, Madam Chair, about what happened on Tuesday after question period when this committee did not reconvene. You said at 9:46 today, quote, "It was never the intention that we would not find resources, but we have to work with them to find resources," end of quote. That's a direct quote from you, Madam Chair. Just to clarify for the record that all opposition whips agreed to make resources available. All opposition MPs returned to committee. Resources were available. There were interpreters in the booths waiting for Liberal members to show up. The only reason that the committee did not return on Tuesday is because after Liberal members filibustered for 3 hours, they then changed tactics to simply not show up so that there would not be a quorum, and therefore the meeting would be suspended until today. So it's just an illustration of Liberals using every tactic in the book to block the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff from having to testify before committee. And with respect to Ms. Telford appearing before committee, listening to my Liberal colleagues speak about this matter, you would think that this was completely unprecedented. First of all, they refer to her as just some staff member. For heaven's sake, she's the Chief of Staff to the Prime Minister. She's the top advisor to the Prime Minister. She's one of the most powerful people in this government. But further to that, it's hardly without precedent. Ms. Telford has appeared before a committee before. She appeared at the Finance Committee. I was a member of the Finance Committee at that time on July 30th of 2020 in regards to the Liberal government's We Charity scandal. She also appeared before the National Defence Committee on May 7th, 2021, with respect to sexual misconduct in the Canadian Armed Forces. So Ms. Telford has appeared twice at committee. There's absolutely no reason why she can't appear before this committee. And really, the motion before us is quite clear. The amendment put forward by Mr. Turnbull to gut my motion to have Ms. Telford appear is straightforward. All the arguments have been made. There is no reason for this debate to continue. All opposition parties are united in seeing that Ms. Telford appear before a committee. Of course, with Ms. Blaney's amendment to my motion, which all opposition MPs are united in support of. The Liberals oppose the motion, my motion amended by Ms. Blaney. Let's get on with it. Let's get to a vote on Mr. Turnbull's amendment. Then let's vote on my amendment and get back to business and hear from the ministers and hear from Ms. Telford next week.
I will just say, Mr. Cooper, you're welcome to do what you're doing is take one sentence out of context. I did also go further on to explain. I understand that you believe that when you want me to be here, whether it's in my constituency week or whatever else, that I have to be here. I get it. I do my best. But I do have obligations to my constituents. I also take my responsibilities as Canadians seriously, and I have to fulfill all of them. So I've, on often occasions, agreed to disagree with you. Sometimes we can find a way forward. In this, I would say that your interpretation versus what I have said are not the same. But I'll leave that with you because I'm not the first person who puts words in my mouth. And it's just, I guess, part of the job, which is unfortunate.
Well, you know me well enough now. By now, I always have a bit of a preamble to set the tone. I know that there are folks watching us. I even have people in my riding who are watching us. And many people are asking what's going on. There are a lot of words that are coming up, filibustering, the need to know, the need to understand, trust, confidence, we need to act. It's high time we act. We're concerned. We have misgivings. We want to know. But I'd like to say, Madam Chairperson, that the proof is in the pudding. And listen, I'm learning a lot from this, and I take my hat off to people, and I think I've got new people to emulate when it comes to filibustering in the future because, they've shown me how to do it and are in fine form. And often people cast aspersions about filibustering and they say, well, you're doing this because X, Y, and Z. And I said, well, don't throw stones at glass houses. Look at yourselves before you cast aspersions. And it's a pity that those that cast those aspersions aren't actually here. So when people ask me what filibustering is, and I'll get to the crux of the matter in a moment, but it's almost 20 to 12. We started at the 9 a.m. this morning. And what I think is that when you stand up and speak for over 10 minutes to defend your point, to meander through the topic and refer back to the past without even addressing the present and without even making valid suggestions for the future, that is the definition of filibustering. And allow me to indulge myself by saying this. And if we cast our minds back to the We Charity episode, there is one single person here who can take the liberty to say that they acted essentially in the interests of the people, their constituents. Let me explain myself. Now, there are always two matters, two things to take into consideration. Good intentions, shedding light on things, getting to the bottom of things to make sure that our democracy isn't undermined. We all agree about that. But how does one approach this? Well, I tell them it's a rule. It's a standing order to run the clock. Why to run the clock? Because maybe someone's going to pull something out of a hat. a rabbit out of a hat. Will there be a panel? Will there be ministers? Will there be a panel of witnesses from midday to 1 p.m.? It's anyone's guess. Will we take a break before question period? We have our commitments. But now we've been going around in circles for the past 3 hours. You know, it's a bit of a ping pong game. You know, you've got a couple of opportunities before you have too many penalties, and it's 3 strikes and you're out. I can't even venture to say how many issues the government has been embroiled in. There's nothing new here. It's not as if the Liberal government has had a clear record for the past several years in every respect. Public trust has been broken.
So first of all, I hope today that we will actually get to a vote. I would be very excited to do that, and at any point that the other side is prepared for that, I am here for it.
Thank you, Mr. Turnbull. So the resources we had asked for this committee were from 4:30 to 6:30, and we are approaching 6:30. What I would like to share with all members is that we have been able to secure resources for Tuesday at 10:30 a.m. to resume this meeting. So you should have an email in your inbox that confirms that we will resume this meeting on Tuesday, 10:30 a.m. in this room. With that, I am going to suspend the meeting, and I will see you on Tuesday.